Hello, and welcome to another episode on the Unbalanced Pedestal podcast. My name is Tina Marie, and today I would like to talk about, I don't want to say a touchy subject, but it's something that's kind of is tied to what I talked about last week in my previous episode. If you have trouble taking a leap of faith. And for this title of this podcast, it's a little bit, again, piggybacking off you as a parent taking a leap of faith into achieving what it is that you want in life, right? And anything that you do, anything that you build up the courage to do or not do, your child or your children will internalize that. And you are ultimately their role model, whether you acknowledge it or not, but you are their role model. You are the first line of heroism, um, or shiro. I'm not sure what the terminology is these days, but you are that person that in their life that shows them what it is to be brave, what it is to be, to display courage, to tackle and face your fears, to love, to support someone else, to stand up for yourself, stand up for your rights, your beliefs, what things that you are that you do right, And I say right versus wrong, but they see everything, and what they see, they internalize it again for themselves. They process that information, and it helps them to form better decisions. And this is going to be along with other people that's within in their environment, in your community, and this will help shape them. Now, for this episode, it's if your children do not surpass you in life, then you have failed them. So this is what we're going to talk about today. So again, it may be a triggering topic, subject. Um, I'll try not to go in too deep or not get too political, stay neutral, because I know there's a lot of things going on in the news currently at the moment, with laws being passed and having to deal with women's rights. And this is nothing speaking on that topic, but I definitely want to just speak from a parental view, from experience. So, you as a person, right? An individual, whether you're a mother or father listening to this, you have taken an oath, essentially. The moment you decided to carry and to have your baby all the way through full term, the full 9 months, more or less. I know sometimes some babies are born early for due to medical reasons, but you have invested that time. You passed go. You did not terminate the pregnancy. You are committed, right? A lot of our society, I'll speak in the Western culture, not so much of the other cultures, because obviously I'm not um, well versed in that. Although my ancestors, family, grandparents, great grandparents come from different parts of the world, in Asia and in the Netherlands, UK, all that, as well as, Africa, Mexico, all of that, right? So I'm speaking to what I know in the Western culture and these. United States of America. So for me growing up, it was implied that when you have children, and this is again within my environment, this could have been from TV, this could have been from other family members, and just seeing other people who may or may not be related to me. And you see they give their child or children a much better life, a better upbringing than what they had. And that is the number one goal of most parents in the world, to provide the financial resources, the material possessions, whatever it is that you didn't have as a child. You want to have your child experience those pleasures, to take advantage of the world, to be the best that they can be. And this is not an army endorsement, but you want to have that, have them achieve all those goals you have that, that you didn't get to do, or your previous ancestors, or even your grandparents, your great grandparents, every generation that comes along, you want that newer generation to do much better, right? To make a change, make a difference. And so, when again, going back to you carrying out the term where your baby is born, from the womb out in the world, you have that responsibility to make sure that you provide them with all the knowledge that you have obtained, or that you have research or you have connections, and to make sure that they use that. Or, I mean, I know sometimes, depending on the age, if they're a teenager or a young adult, it may be a little bit much harder because they have formed their own ideas. And, it's kind of like, I hear what you're saying, but I want to do it my way, right? Which is fine because they're becoming their own person. And this is what you want. You want them to be independent. So when they leave the household, you have gave them the basic knowledge and more, not just like basic, like, okay, here's how to do laundry, which is very important, but you want to make sure they have the basic knowledge of what they need to do, because you didn't have that knowledge, at least, right? This can be in finances. This is how they know how to watch how much money's coming in, how much money's coming out, budgeting, credit. And this is something I talked about in my previous episodes. You can go ahead and check out that in the playlist. But you have the ultimate responsibility to make sure your children do better than you, not to live the same life that you are living. All depends on, I guess, what you're doing. I mean, if it's like following your footsteps because that's what they want to do, and it will help them to become a better version of themselves, right? And it would also help their children if they decide to have children, right? Or if they have nieces and nephews, it helps the future generation that comes after them. Now, when the child follows in the wrong footsteps, or goes down the wrong path, where they're not progressing, they are declining, financially or mentally, because, this world that we live in is just so much for us to deal with. And, there's a lot of pressure. There's so much pressure than before even when I was born, how people talk about the simpler times and then, technology, obviously, and just being more, people are having more FOMO and more anxiety and more stress because that's the society. It's just the societal pressures, right? Peer pressure in all environments that you're in. So, with all of that, right, the child or your children may digress, they may need help. And I'm not saying from, again, a mental standpoint, help. And if they do, then I definitely highly suggest that you seek out a therapist, because there's nothing wrong with therapy. There's nothing wrong with getting professional help. It has always been a stigma in the African American community, because it was always a frowned upon. But this day and age, there's no reason why. In 2022, there's no reason why no one should be frowning upon getting professional help from a licensed therapist. If you see that they are needing help in another area, part of of their lives, whether it is they need financial help, and this is going back to, okay, what is it that they're struggling with? And not to say to do a handout or anything like that. If it's like an emergency, and if that's the case, like they have an apartment and they may have lost their job and they don't have enough savings because they weren't making enough. So they were living like paycheck to paycheck, but with not enough saved up, and they need the extra boost. That's fine. And I was saying, not to discourage that. But if they have a job, they have their apartment, and they are not saving their money, they're not spending it wisely, they're not budgeting, this is where you need to step in. Whether it is that you sit down with them and you go over their finances, and you they cut back on, they first have to identify what is, a need, a necessity, not a want. What is the biggest one probably is their cell phone bill. If they're not on a family plan or whatever it is, what is their cell phone bill looks like? Because nowadays, just for one line, it could be easily, like $120 just for one line, and depending on which carrier you have. It's like it's like paying for, like 4 Uber trips depending in 1 month. It's crazy. But you look at that, you look at their eating habits. Do they cook at home? And some young adults may not want to cook because it's just too much work for them. They don't want to do dishes. I get that part, right? But this is where they need to like really hone in, like really get it serious. If you want to show them how to cook, if to show that, okay, you can cook once a week. You do your meal prep, or once or twice a week, depending on if they're a finicky eater, if they don't like leftovers, or they may eat a lot, depending what their activity is doing, if they work out or go to the gym. If they're very active, because again, at that age, you're very active and you burn a lot of calories. Also look at the other expenses, the glamorous expenses, like subscription. Are they paying for Amazon or Prime? Do they have Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus, so many other so many other expenses, additional expenses. Like those little things add up a lot. And I can definitely think back to the time where, for me, I was renting a room. This is when I first moved out, as a before I graduated high school. I moved out, I rented a room. So I had kind of my own place, but I was on my own with a roommate. And just that alone, rent just killed me. Like my money for work went directly to rent. It was before I did that, I had money. And then when I rented a room, the money literally went to rent. So, and just eating, just doing that. If I didn't go like to my family's house to eat, a few times a week or whatever, or stuff like that. And, cell phone bill, or actually back then was pagers. So that was a thing. Like pagers were like $20 a month. Well, that's like if you had a fancy pager, the one that you call the operator and they transcribe your text to the pager, which was like so cool. Um, I'm going down like memory lane right now, but like little things like that. And this was back in, oh my God, like 98. So yeah, we have come a long way in technology. This is like before pre-internet. Actually, that's a lie. We did have internet back then, but it wasn't widely, use internet at work. You don't have a computer at your house. Because back then we were like way too expensive. But anyway, I'm digressing. So you see that they may need help in those areas. So you have to have that talk with them. Like this is what you have to set your priorities, because, and keep it real with them. You have to set those priorities. They have to set those priorities because you do not want them to be in debt, especially at a young age. And whether you may have experienced what it's like to be in debt or not, it all you have to, it is your responsibility to show them how to do, again, these basic things. You do not want them to go through life, continue to go through life and not knowing. um is not to say that everything you teach them they're going to do. Again, they're going to take what they want with a grain of salt, but if you keep it and be consistent, and to make sure they just steer on the path where they are not, I don't want to say suffering, because that sounds like a very harsh word, or living below what you are. That's like not what any parent wants to see their child, right? And this goes with, not just finances, and it's can go for so many different things. Like what is it that you have done in your life that you have surpassed your own parents? Is it buying a car, because your parents didn't have a car. They may have walked to work, or they took public transportation. So you one up them by having a car. You may one up them by owning a home. You may one up them by income, at your current workplace, or you're an entrepreneur. So what is it that you have done to one up your own parents? And now I want you to think about your child, and depend on, again, what age your child is. Are they young enough where you can teach them financial responsibility or help around the house? Have you set up a fund for them? Insurance. There's so many different options out there, and this is not an endorsement for any kind of insurance, but there are people out there who are, depending, the agent you find, and making sure you have good rapport with them. Join me next week for part 2.